She cleaned his office for 12 years, then walked in and fired him on the spot. They called her Mama Rose, not Rose Washington, not Mrs. Washington like her name tag said, not even Rose from cleaning, just Mama Rose, like she was some old lady who belonged in the kitchen instead of the boardroom. Every single morning at exactly 5:30 a.m., long before the fancy cars pulled into the parking lot and before the suits started talking about million-dollar deals, she was already there, unlocking the front door with her own key. Rose pushed her bright yellow cart past the shiny glass doors of Summit Financial Group in downtown Atlanta. Her faded blue uniform was worn thin from hundreds of trips through the washing machine, and her white shoes were completely flat from walking those cold marble floors thousands and thousands of times. She kept extra paper towels stuffed in her right pocket, a quiet but warm smile always on her weathered face, and moved through those hallways like she knew every single corner, crack, and crevice of that massive building. And she did know every inch. 12 long years. 12 years of emptying overflowing trash cans from conference rooms where men in $1,000 suits made decisions about other people's life savings. 12 years of mopping pristine floors while listening to phone calls about six-figure bonuses and luxury vacations to places she could never afford. 12 years of cleaning floor-to-ceiling windows while watching people treat her like she was just another piece of office equipment that happened to move around. To most people who worked in that gleaming tower, she might as well have been completely invisible, like a ghost that showed up to make messes disappear. They walked past her without making eye contact, talked over her head like she had no ears, stepped around her like she was a potted plant, and acted like she wasn't even a real human being with thoughts and feelings. The only exceptions were a few kind souls, mostly young people fresh out of college who still remembered their mothers taught them to say please and thank you to everyone, not just people who could help their careers. But Rose wasn't angry or bitter, at least not in the beginning of those 12 years. She kept quiet, did her work with pride, and paid very close attention to everything happening around her. She listened carefully to the loud laughter echoing from the big corner offices with the best views of the city. She heard private conversations that people thought nobody else would ever care about or remember. The cruel jokes about customers, the arrogant showing off about expensive purchases, the casual lies told to cover up mistakes. She learned absolutely everything she needed to know about that company just from pushing a mop bucket around and having really good ears that never missed a single word. One Tuesday afternoon, a cocky sales guy in a designer suit dropped his sandwich wrapper directly onto the freshly mopped floor instead of walking 3 steps to throw it in the trash can that was right there. Rose quietly bent down and picked it up without saying a single word of complaint. He walked right past her, didn't even glance in her direction, just barked out orders. Make sure you get under all the desks, too, especially the corners. We got some very important clients coming in this afternoon and everything better be spotless. She smiled politely and nodded like always. The very next week, that same arrogant man spilled his hot coffee all over the exact same section of floor and immediately blamed Rose for not cleaning it properly the first time, even though she had scrubbed it perfectly. She just nodded again patiently, cleaned up his mess without complaining, and made a mental note of his name and face. It wasn't the first time something like this happened. It definitely wouldn't be the last. Up on the fancy 5th floor, where all the executives had their massive offices, the big boss himself, Michael Sterling, always spoke too loudly and constantly smelled like expensive cologne that probably cost more than Rose made in a month. One day, she overheard him laughing with his personal secretary about the little people who worked in the building. He said with a nasty chuckle, "Can you believe some people work their whole lives in places like this and never get anywhere? Important? Just grateful for any little job they can get their hands on, no matter how small." She heard every single word clearly. He didn't care if she did hear him. He didn't even think about whether she might be listening because to him, she was nobody. He had absolutely no idea who she really was or what she was really capable of. None of them did. That entire building was packed full of people who thought their fancy job titles automatically made them important and valuable. People who truly believed that respect and authority came from having endless meetings and making other people wait around for their decisions. They didn't know the most important secret of all. Rose didn't need their respect or recognition because Rose actually owned more of that company than anyone else walking through those marble hallways every day. But she hadn't told a single soul about that truth. Not yet. As she pushed her squeaky cart past the executive offices that particular morning, stopping to carefully clean every fingerprint off the thick glass wall where the company logo was. Painted in gold letters, her phone buzzed quietly in her uniform pocket. One simple text message from her lawyer. Just 4 words that would change everything. Everything is ready now. She calmly put the phone back in her pocket, her face showing absolutely nothing to anyone who might be watching. Then she kept walking down that familiar hallway, but this time she wasn't just cleaning and organizing. She was getting ready for something big, something that would shock everyone in that building, and nobody saw it coming at all. Before Rose Washington ever touched a single mop or cleaning supply in that gleaming office building, she sat at her small kitchen table in South Atlanta with her beloved husband James Washington, carefully looking at business plans and financial documents spread out across the surface like pieces of a complicated puzzle they were trying to solve together. That was way back in 1995, when Summit Financial Group was nothing more than a big dream and some ideas scribbled down on notebook, paper and napkins during late-night conversations about their future. James had the burning drive and ambition, that special kind of hunger and determination that you absolutely cannot teach someone in business school or any classroom. He grew up dirt poor in rural Mississippi, worked his way through college by cleaning offices and bathrooms at night while other students were sleeping, and learned everything he knew about money and business by carefully watching rich people spend their fortunes and make their investments. Rose was completely different from her husband, but equally smart in her own special way. She didn't like to talk much during business meetings with strangers, but she could look at columns of numbers and financial statements and immediately see problems, opportunities, and solutions that other people with fancy educations completely missed. She was naturally quiet and thoughtful, but she was incredibly intelligent and sharp. Really, really smart about money, people, and business. In early 1995, James and his college friend David Kim managed to scrape together just barely enough money to start a tiny loan company that would help working families get the money they needed for emergencies, car repairs, and home improvements. They started with nothing but one cramped little office space, 2 ancient desktop computers that crashed constantly, and a single phone line that cut out at least half the time when they were trying to talk to potential customers. Rose was the very first person to invest her own money in their dream. Her beloved grandmother had recently passed away and left Rose a modest inheritance, enough money that most people would have used to buy a nice car or take a dream vacation, or put a down payment on a better house in a safer neighborhood. But Rose had a completely different plan for that money, a plan that would change all their lives forever. "Put the business registration papers in your name only," she told James one quiet evening after they had finished dinner and were sitting at that same kitchen table. "I'll stay completely quiet in the background where nobody can see me. People don't need to know about my involvement yet. It's better this way for now." He looked at her across the table with confusion and asked, "Are you absolutely sure about this decision? This is your money we're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm doing, and I trust you completely with everything," she said firmly. "This is the right choice for our family and our future." Over the next 8 amazing years, their small company grew and expanded like wildfire spreading across a dry field. David Kim handled getting new customers and marketing their services to the community. James took care of all the daily business operations, employee management, and customer service. Rose carefully watched every single penny they earned and every dollar they spent on expenses. She personally kept track of all the important contracts and legal agreements, helped write the most important business documents and proposals, and quietly set up a completely separate company registered only in her name just to be extra safe and protect their interests. It was her smart way of protecting both her husband and their growing business from any future problems that might come up. But unfortunately, James couldn't protect himself from the biggest danger of all, his own failing health. In the spring of 2003, a massive heart attack took him away forever while he was working late at the office, trying to close a big deal that would have helped dozens of families get the loans they desperately needed. Just like that, without any warning, he was gone from her life. At only 52 years old, with so much work left to do, and so many dreams still unfulfilled. David Kim gave a very short, cold speech at James's funeral that was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by James's kindness and generosity. But David's speech was all business talk about profit margins and growth projections. He barely mentioned Rose at all during his remarks, like she had just been James's quiet wife sitting in the background, and nothing more important than that. That completely impersonal speech should have been the very first warning sign that trouble was coming. The second clear warning sign came exactly 1 month later when David quietly filed official legal papers to remove James's name from all the business documents and systematically pushed Rose out of every single business meeting, phone call, and decision-making process. He clearly thought she would just disappear quietly, go back to being a housewife, and let him have complete control of the company that she had helped build from nothing. But David Kim had made a huge mistake, because Rose had her own legal papers, too. She had original partnership documents and contracts from the very beginning that clearly gave her 50% ownership of everything James had owned in the business. And much more importantly than that, she had detailed proof of every investment, every decision, and every contribution she had made over 8 years. She could have hired expensive lawyers immediately and marched into that office building with legal papers and court orders demanding everything that legally belonged to her. But instead of fighting, she made a different choice. She decided to wait patiently, because Rose understood the crucial difference between having power and knowing exactly when and how to use that power most effectively. She stayed completely quiet and invisible. No lawyers, no angry phone calls, no public fights or drama, just patient silence while she planned her next move. Then in early 2008, while reading community announcements posted on the bulletin board, near her church, she saw a simple job posting that caught her attention immediately. Night cleaning crew wanted at Summit Financial Group. No experience necessary. Apply in person. She carefully circled that job announcement with a red pen and smiled to herself. 3 days later, she walked into that gleaming office building, wearing a brand new uniform she had bought at Walmart, carrying a completely fake resume with made-up work history, and got hired on the spot by a manager who never bothered to check a single reference. David Kim never recognized her because he had never really looked at her carefully in the first place. And by 2008, he wasn't even running the company anymore anyway. A new name was on everyone's lips and business cards: Michael Sterling. A young, arrogant white guy with an MBA from some expensive private university. He didn't know anything at all about how the company had started, who had built it from nothing, or what it was originally supposed to represent, but he definitely knew how to act like he owned every inch of the place and everyone in it. Rose Washington kept showing up for work every single night, cleaning one floor at a time, for 12 incredibly long years. But she wasn't just pushing a mop around and emptying trash cans. She was carefully watching every move, listening to every conversation, and remembering absolutely everything she saw and heard. By year 5 of her secret mission, Rose knew every single inch of Summit Financial's impressive headquarters building better than the architects who had designed it. She knew which bathroom door in the third-floor women's restroom stuck and needed an extra push, which expensive copy machine on the second floor jammed every Tuesday morning like clockwork, and which high-level executives regularly used their company credit cards to pay for personal expenses like fancy dinners, expensive clothes, and family vacations that had nothing to do with business. She didn't have to guess anymore about what was happening behind closed doors. She knew exactly what kind of place Summit Financial had become under Michael Sterling's leadership, and it made her sick to her stomach. The company had transformed from a small, caring business that helped working families get fair loans when they needed them most, into a cold, greedy machine where the people at the top got richer every quarter, while everyone else struggled to pay their bills and keep their jobs. She watched honest loan officers get screamed at and threatened with firing for refusing to push terrible deals on customers who couldn't afford them. She heard human resources people having quiet meetings about cutting health benefits and sick leave to save money for executive bonuses. And more than once, she witnessed good, hard-working employees get fired immediately and escorted out of the building for asking reasonable questions or speaking up about unfair treatment. One of those fired employees was a brave lady named Patricia Holmes, a single mother of 3 who had worked there for 6 years, and asked management why the company was charging such extremely high interest rates and fees to people who could barely afford to put food on their tables. Patricia was walked out the next day with no explanation and no severance pay. Rose was completely invisible during all these conversations and meetings. People said absolutely anything they wanted around her because they thought she was too stupid or unimportant to understand what they were talking about. At first, she just listened carefully and tried to remember everything. Then she started secretly writing things down in detail. She kept a small, worn notebook hidden in her employee locker, tucked behind her extra cleaning gloves and spare uniforms where nobody would ever think to look for it. Every single page was completely filled with names, dates, direct quotes, and exact details about what she had witnessed. If you had found that notebook and looked through it carefully, you would have seen entries like, March 12th, 2:30 p.m. Michael Sterling said in meeting room 3 that we can charge whatever interest rates we want because people will pay them anyway since they're desperate for money. July 8th, 11:15 a.m. Heard manager Tom Phillips tell new employee to lie about real interest rates if customers ask too many detailed questions about the loan terms. October 15th, 4:45 p.m. Sterling said, these people should be grateful we give them loans at all, when talking specifically about black customers who were asking for fair treatment. I was standing right there cleaning the windows and heard every word. Rose wasn't keeping this detailed record because she was bitter or angry about her treatment. She was doing it because she could clearly see the truth about what Summit Financial had become. She saw a company that had completely forgotten how to care about people and only cared about making profits. One cold night around midnight in November, Rose was quietly cleaning the hallway outside Sterling's enormous corner office when she heard multiple voices coming from inside his private office. The heavy wooden door was cracked open just enough for her to hear every single word of their conversation clearly. Sterling was laughing loudly with 2 other senior managers, and their conversation made Rose's blood run cold. So I told that complaining employee, Sterling said between chuckles, if you don't like the way we do business here, you can pack up your stuff and go flip burgers at McDonald's somewhere else. I've got at least 100 people who would gladly take your job tomorrow morning without asking any stupid questions. All 3 men laughed like this was the funniest joke they had ever heard. Then one of the managers added, half these people working here don't even deserve to have jobs in a nice place like this anyway. They should be thanking us every day for letting them work here. More cruel laughter filled the office. Rose stood there in the dark hallway, completely unseen and unheard by the men inside. She didn't walk away feeling angry or upset. She walked away with more proof of what she already knew in her heart. The more she saw and heard over the years, the more she understood the complete truth. This wasn't just a workplace with some problems that could be fixed with better management. It was rotten from the very top down to the foundation, and the people in charge weren't going to change their behavior just because someone asked them politely to be nicer to their employees and customers. They needed to be completely replaced with people who actually cared. She started making a detailed plan for action, working on it piece by piece over many months. She began meeting secretly with a lawyer at a small, quiet diner across town, a sharp woman named Lisa Chen, who was incredibly smart and professional, but didn't ask too many personal questions about Rose's motivations. During their third meeting, Rose handed Lisa a small flash drive that contained thousands of photos, dozens of audio recordings, and 12 full years' worth of detailed written notes about everything she had witnessed. Lisa didn't say a single word for almost 20 minutes. After carefully looking through everything Rose had collected, finally she looked up at Rose with a serious expression on her face. "You do understand, this is going to completely change everything at that company, right? Once you decide to do this, and we file these papers, that whole building is going to shake from top to bottom." Rose nodded calmly. "It's already shaking and crumbling. They just don't realize it yet because they're too arrogant to see what's right in front of them." Lisa smiled with admiration. "I'll get all the legal papers prepared immediately." Rose's plan was beautifully simple and foolproof. Let Sterling and his cronies keep thinking she was just a harmless cleaning lady who didn't matter. Let them continue treating her like she was invisible and stupid. Let them get more comfortable and confident in their cruelty every single day. Because she knew that the higher someone thinks they are above everyone else, the harder and more painful they fall when someone finally pulls the rug out from under their feet. And Rose Washington was about to pull that rug so hard that the whole building would feel it. The single moment that finally broke Rose Washington's incredible patience came on what seemed like a perfectly ordinary Wednesday afternoon in late October. Rose had just finished her usual thorough cleaning of the second-floor employee break room, carefully wiping down every table and chair, emptying all the trash cans, restocking the expensive coffee that cost more per pound than most people made in an entire day, and making sure every surface was spotless and ready for the afternoon. Rush of workers taking their brief breaks. She was walking slowly down the main hallway, pushing her yellow cart and thinking about her evening plans, when she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. A half-eaten chocolate donut sitting right in the exact middle of the pristine marble floor, not anywhere near a trash can or dropped accidentally, but placed there deliberately like someone wanted to create a mess just to see what would happen. The donut had been bitten once and then abandoned, leaving sticky chocolate glaze smeared on the expensive flooring that Rose had just mopped to perfection less than an hour earlier. As she bent down slowly to pick up the messy donut, she heard a familiar voice behind her that made her skin crawl. "Well, well, well. Looks like you missed a big spot over there too, didn't you?" It was Michael Sterling's arrogant voice, and Rose could hear the nasty smile in his tone even before she turned around. He was standing at the end of the long hallway with both hands casually shoved in the pockets of his expensive suit, wearing that same smug expression he always had when he thought he was being clever or funny at someone else's expense. Rose straightened up slowly and looked directly at him. "Excuse me, sir? I'm not sure what you're referring to." He walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps, like a predator approaching cornered prey. "Right over there," he said, pointing with one manicured finger toward a section of floor that was absolutely perfect and spotless. "We've got some extremely important clients walking through this exact hallway in less than an hour, and frankly, I'm not confident that you can handle getting it actually clean this time. Think you can manage that simple task?" There was absolutely nothing wrong with any part of that floor. Every inch was gleaming and perfect. Rose stood up straight, still holding the sticky donut, and looked Michael Sterling directly in his cold eyes without blinking or looking away. She didn't say anything for several long seconds, just stared at him calmly. Sterling stared right back at her and chuckled like she was part of some private joke that only he understood and found amusing. "You know something?" he said, shaking his head with fake disappointment. "Sometimes I honestly think you people just pretend to work hard so you can collect an easy paycheck without actually earning it. Like you're taking advantage of our generosity." Rose's eyes became very still and focused, like a hunter watching prey. What exactly do you mean when you say you people, Mr. Sterling? He paused for just a moment, then waved his hand dismissively, like her question was ridiculous and not worth his time. Oh, come on now. Don't be so sensitive about everything. I'm just saying that maybe if we paid you folks a little bit more money, you'd actually be able to see the dirt and problems before I have to point them out to you myself. It's just basic work ethic and attention to detail. Rose looked at him for a very long moment, processing every word he had just said, and filing it away in her memory along with thousands of other insults and cruel comments she had endured over 12 years. Then she nodded once, very slowly and deliberately. I understand completely, sir. I'll make absolutely sure that everything is perfect and spotless for your important clients. Sterling clapped his hands together with satisfaction and grinned like he had just won some kind of victory. Now that's exactly what I like to hear from you. Finally, some good attitude and proper respect. He turned on his expensive leather shoes and walked away down the hallway, probably feeling very proud of himself for putting the uppity cleaning lady in her proper place once again. He had absolutely no idea what he had just started or what was about to happen to his comfortable little world. That night, instead of going straight home to her quiet house like she usually did, Rose made a different choice. She used her employee key card to get back into the Summit Financial building after hours, took the elevator to the executive floor, and used a master key card she had quietly borrowed from a careless manager months earlier and had copied for exactly this purpose. She moved through the empty offices quickly and efficiently, pulling important files from locked cabinets, taking clear photographs of incriminating documents with her phone, and printing out crucial reports that she knew would be devastating. Evidence. The most important document she found was Michael Sterling's personal bonus report from the previous quarter. It showed in black and white numbers that he had approved a $75,000 bonus payment for himself. For what? The paperwork called Outstanding Leadership and Exceptional Performance. At the exact same time he was giving himself that huge bonus, he had eliminated employee sick days, reduced hourly pay for all part-time workers, and completely canceled the small yearly Christmas bonus that regular employees had received for over a decade and counted on to help pay for their children's presents. But the final straw that pushed Rose past her breaking point came the very next morning when she arrived at work. One of the other cleaning ladies, a hard-working woman named Maria Gonzalez, who had 3 young children and worked 2 jobs to support them, came into the employee break room with tears streaming down her face. Maria's teenage daughter had been seriously injured in a terrible car accident the night before and was in the hospital fighting for her life. Maria desperately needed time off work to be with her daughter during this crisis, but her request for emergency leave had been coldly denied by management. Not enough people available to cover your shifts, they had told her without any sympathy or human compassion. Business comes first. Your personal problems will have to wait. Maria couldn't even speak through her heartbroken tears and desperate worry about her child. Nobody from management cared about her family emergency or her daughter's condition. To them, she was just a name on a work schedule, easily replaceable and not worth any special consideration. Rose listened to Maria's story, then stood up calmly, took out her cell phone, and stepped outside into the parking lot. She dialed Lisa Chen's number and waited for her lawyer to answer. "Lisa, it's Rose," she said when the call connected. "It's time. I'm ready to do this now." "Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" Lisa asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," Rose replied firmly. "Good," Lisa said. "I have to warn you, it's going to get very messy, very quickly once we start this process. I've been cleaning up other people's messes my whole life," Rose said with determination. "Now it's time to make one final mess that will clean everything up permanently." Over the weekend, Rose and Lisa worked around the clock to finalize every detail of their plan. The following Monday morning, Rose Washington made a decision that would change her life forever. Instead of parking in the employee lot behind the building where she had parked every day for 12 years, she drove her car right up to the front entrance and parked in the space clearly marked Executive Parking Only. She didn't wear her faded cleaning uniform. Instead, she wore a sharp black business suit she had purchased specially for this day, along with professional shoes that had never touched a mop bucket or walked across a dirty floor. She walked confidently through the main front entrance, past the surprised security guard who had never seen her enter through that door before, straight to the elevator and pressed the button for the top executive floor. At exactly 10 a.m., she opened the door to the main conference room where Michael Sterling was conducting his weekly meeting with all the senior managers and department heads. The entire room went completely silent. Every conversation stopped, mid-sentence. Sterling looked up with a confused frown on his face. "I'm sorry, but we're in a private executive meeting here. Maintenance and cleaning staff are supposed to come during after-business hours only. You'll need to leave immediately." Rose smiled calmly and walked slowly to the head of the long mahogany conference table. "I'm not here for maintenance or cleaning, Mr. Sterling." She set down a thick manila folder and looked around the room at all the shocked faces. "My name is Rose Washington, and I am the majority owner and rightful CEO of Summit Financial Group." The silence in that room was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Then Lisa Chen walked confidently into the room behind Rose, carrying her professional briefcase and wearing her own expensive business suit. "Good morning, everyone," Lisa said in her calm, professional voice. "I'm Lisa Chen, legal counsel for Mrs. Rose Washington. All board members and relevant parties were properly notified of this emergency meeting exactly as required by law and company bylaws." Michael Sterling's mouth fell wide open and his face turned pale white. One of the other managers whispered urgently, "What the hell is happening here right now?" Rose opened her folder and pulled out official legal documents. "These are the original partnership agreements from 1995 when this company was founded. Updated ownership transfer. Documents and a notarized legal letter transferring all voting rights and executive authority to me upon the death of my husband and business partner James Washington in 2003. She looked slowly around the room, making eye contact with each person present. "For 12 long years, I have watched this company completely forget what it was supposed to represent. I have watched all of you treat hardworking employees like disposable garbage, take cruel advantage of customers who trusted you with their financial futures, and turn my late husband's dream of helping working families into your personal money-making machine that only benefits yourselves." She stared directly at Michael Sterling with eyes full of quiet power. "And I have watched you specifically turn a company that was built to help people into a place that only helps your bank account and your ego." Sterling tried to force a laugh, but his voice cracked. "This is absolutely insane. This has got to be some kind of elaborate scam or mistake." "There's no scam and no mistake," Lisa interrupted firmly, placing official legal documents in front of each person sitting at the table. "Every single document has been thoroughly verified by multiple law firms and government agencies. As of this moment, Mrs. Washington is exercising her legal right as majority shareholder to remove Michael Sterling from his position as CEO, effective immediately." Sterling jumped up from his chair, his face now bright red with anger and panic. "You can't just walk in here and steal my company. I'll call the police. I'll sue everyone in this room." Rose looked at him with perfect calm and spoke in a quiet voice that somehow filled the entire room. "I'm not stealing anything, Mr. Sterling. I'm simply taking back what has always belonged to me since the day this company was founded." At that exact moment, 2 professional security guards walked into the conference room, but they weren't there to escort Rose out of the building. Lisa had called them in advance. "Mr. Sterling," one of the guards said politely but firmly, "we need you to clean out your personal office and leave the building immediately. You have 30 minutes to collect your belongings." Sterling looked desperately around the room for support, for someone to defend him or argue on his behalf. But nobody moved to help him. Nobody spoke up. Every single person in that room could see the legal documents were real, and they all knew their jobs now depended on Rose Washington's decisions. Sterling grabbed his expensive briefcase, his personal coffee mug, and his wounded pride, then stormed out of the conference room, followed by two other managers who suddenly remembered they had urgent appointments somewhere else and needed to leave immediately. After the room finally cleared of Sterling's supporters, Rose turned calmly to the remaining employees who had stayed behind. "I want everyone to understand that I'm not here to play power games or show off," she said clearly. "I'm here to rebuild this company and restore it to what it was always meant to be, a place that helps people instead of taking advantage of them." One of the younger managers, a woman named Sarah who had always tried to treat employees fairly, raised her hand nervously. "Mrs. Washington, what do you want us to do first?" Rose smiled warmly, the first genuinely happy smile she had shown in that building in 12 years. "We're going to start by listening carefully to all the people we've been ignoring for too long. The employees who keep this place running, the customers who trust us with their money, and the community that depends on us to do the right thing. Real change starts today, and it starts with respect." And for the first time in 12 incredibly long years, Rose Washington sat down in the executive chair that had always rightfully belonged to her. The cleaning lady had finally become the CEO, and everyone who had treated her like she didn't matter was about to learn the most important lesson of their professional lives. Sometimes the person you completely ignore and disrespect is actually the person who holds all the real power. And sometimes true justice comes quietly, carrying a mop bucket and 12 years' worth of patience, planning, and perfect timing.